Okay. James, you're a co-host, so I hope that when I drop off, that continues to work. Hey, Pritesh. Hey, David.
Hi.
Should we? So, Pritesh, do you know whether Vani, Samir, somebody on your side will join, or should we get started?
I think you can get started. Let me ping Vani.
Oh, there is Vani, so she's joining.
Okay.
Okay, we have actually only one agenda item that we discussed yesterday in the Slack, or at least the one that I remember. Which was kind of the comment that Brandon posted on the issue for support for OCI 1.1. Let me just find that one and I will share my screen so we can take a look at it.
So this is an overview of what was discussed on Monday, right, Toddy?
No, so Brandon specifically has some concern with how do
Oh,
we approach the OCI 1.1 support. Uh, and I asked him to just jump on a call and kind of discuss that here.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth a bunch of times in the issue, and I figured it might have been easier to just jump on a call.
Yeah. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. Brandon, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, so I don't know if I am misunderstanding exactly what's going on with the flag or if there's a misunderstanding of what the distribution spec did. And so it could be either side here that's misunderstanding the other side. But from my impression, as long as what that flag is doing is changing how you push the exact same manifest and just whether or not you push the refers fallback tag or depend on the registry having the refers API, then I think we probably don't want that tag, that flag.
I think I can provide some background. I think the reason we wanted the flag was the other tools which works in CI/CD, the compatibility with other tools in CI/CD pipelines. I think so. It is possible. Let's say one tool goes with 1.1, that's Notary pushes a signature with 1.1 spec, and the other tool which I have in my CI/CD pipeline doesn't work with 1.1.
So does this mean you're going to have tools out there that only know how to talk with the fallback tag?
It's possible. The current tools only talks with fallback tag, right? There are tools out there which only talks with fallback tag right now.
And I
So
think that was my concern of having the flag at all, was because if you do that, you're going to create that split brain issue.
yes, I agree there, but I mean, so like the problem here is how do we make sure that we don't break users right now who would be using the fallback tag? For example, if let's say I am a user and my registry supports 1.1 right now, okay? If notation removes by default users start using OCR 1.1, it will start pushing signatures using 1.1 spec and spec. But my other tooling which I have in my CI/CD pipeline, which I might use, let's say Aura CLI, it's of older, it doesn't support 1.1, so it's always using for tag. So now the issue would be notation will push the signature using 1.1, but Aura CLI expectation is using 1.0, the tag schema. So the
So what happens
interoperability between tool was the problem. So
if
either it's
somebody
like,
has a container image on one registry that's been signed with notation and the tooling is saying specifically do the fallback tag, but the tool that you do the copy with is aware of refers and it just pushes to the new registry and uses the refers API to do that, does that mean that nobody can check those signatures anymore because they were pushed without the fallback tag?
So can you please repeat that? And also the
I'm just thinking of compatibility with other tools out there. And so one of the goals of doing the refers was that you might copy images with a different tool than you would push the original content. You go from one registry to another. And so if I was to copy this image that has been built and depends on that fallback tag being there, and I now copy it to another registry and my tooling says, hey, I'm aware that the refers API exists, it works. I'm going to copy this image without the fallback tag. Does that mean that now notation can't verify that signature anymore?
notation would be able to verify. For verify, we are thinking of fallback for sure. For verify, we are thinking about fallback, but it's other tools, let's say, if you are using ORAS to inspect the image or inspect the blob, or you have some other mechanism to download the signature and verify it, yes, that might break because it might expect the reference API tag for putting the image index instead of the reference API or other way around. So it was, for example, let's say I have a tooling which notation, let's say right now if I have the notation, I have a tooling, let's say, or asked to pull the signature and somehow I verify it offline, performing some metadata inspection, all that on them. The problem might be that right now that tooling expect to query the tag schema. Once notation automatically switches to 1.1, that tooling will break, unless that tooling also migrates to 1.1 at the same time.
Yeah, and the goal of how we designed the distribution spec was that all of that switch back and forth was supposed to be automatic because the tooling would just know that the API exists or the API doesn't exist. And so it didn't have to have the user injecting that.
Yes, but there are tools out there right now which works on tag schema, which doesn't check for reference, right? So unless they migrate, all of the tools migrate at the same time, it would be a split behavior. Like unless all the tools
you're talking about older versions of notation.
Yes.
Okay.
Like for example, yeah, and also if someone has written the custom verifier in the enterprise, that will also break. So it's like that's the reason we wanted, like, okay, users should make the call if they want it, or else we will have to bump up the major version. There were two calls. Either because we are making a backward compatibility for this kind of customer, so either it's like we support with the flag for current version, and probably in future we do the major version bump and switch the behavior. So that was we were discussing about that. Okay, for current version like 1.1 or 1.2 release, we can add a tag, add a flag there, and use that for signing. For verification, we will always do the fallback. But in future, when we release 2.0, we will start by default would be OCI 1.1 spec.
So for verification, if the registry says it supports the refers API, I don't think there's any reason for you to check the fallback tag, because if you push a manifest up there with the subject, it's going to show up in the refers API whether or not you push that fallback tag. So the verification side, I think you're safe to depend on the registry.
Yes, for verification, there will be no flag to choose between. By default, we were doing the automatic fallback as per OCI 1.1. But for signing, we were like, okay, let's allow user to choose for time being, and then when we do the major version bump, because it's like a breaking customer behavior here, so we were like, for 1.2 release, we were planning to have it as a flag, and in future release, major version bump, just remove that flag and make 1.1 default.
I'd almost lean toward calling it a compatibility mode, where you're saying, I want to push this content up to the registry, but for compatibility, also push this other content that older clients might need.
Folks, we have David hand up, and I also have some questions.
Go ahead, David.
Given these concerns on both sides, would it make more sense to have the flag be more of a negative flag, like don't use refers API, and the sort of normal mechanism as designed by the OCI spec would be the default?
I also
Yeah,
had the
the only
same question. Like, I am not sure that the name of the flag is something that speaks well to me.
the thing is like, yes, if we want negative by default 1.1, we will have to do major version release because it's breaking the current experience. So it's like if unless notation decides to go for 2.0, we just cannot do it. Like there is no way
So
to do it in backward compatible manner for users.
Well,
I think we had a
I bet.
talk.
how does the distribution spec respond in the case if you push it as subject and it's a 1.1 distribution spec, it stores it using refers, and then a 1.0 client asks for what would effectively be the fallback scenario.
There would never be a 1.0 client querying for refers because refers is a 1.1 API.
That's what I mean. That's why I said a 1.0 client asking for what is effectively the fallback from the 1.1.
Yeah, the fallback tag itself was defined as a 1.1 fallback.
Right, but what is
So it's
effectively that for notation, for example, currently that's what it would be asking for, right?
yeah,
So
I
it
just want to
knows
be careful
about
that
the schema, the fallback schema, and so it's saying, give me this tag. Is there any logic or requirements in the OCI distribution spec to materialize that tag?
from the OCI standpoint, all clients that are looking for refers, whether they're talking to a 1.1 or 1.0 registry, are going to be a 1.1 client because they're looking for the refers, whichever way they're querying for it.
No, I'm not. I'm
Um,
saying not.
if
I'm explicitly
if they're
saying
not
not asking for refers, asking for the equivalent of a refer using the fallback tag.
even the equivalent of refer, if you're looking for metadata on a container image, you're following that logic. You're looking for the a manifest that has that subject field. You're following that logic. Any client that would not be looking for that, that would be a true 1.0 client, would not be querying for the metadata. They would just be running the container image
Not
or an
querying for the
artifact
metadata,
directly.
but querying for the tag.
Yeah, if you query for the tag itself, you're going to try to do what with the tag?
Pull it.
Are you trying to run the tag?
No, presumably that tag contains a signature, so you'd want to pull it and verify it.
Yeah, so the fact that you're querying for a signature on another container image means that you're following kind of that 1.1 logic, just because we specified all that in there. I would say the exception to that is if we were not following the fallback logic that we defined in 1.1 and you're doing something similar to other projects where they made their own tag, that we explicitly kept it different from this. But all
I mean,
the
Yeah, but
fallback
you're saying,
logic,
Brandon, essentially you're arguing that there is no problem here then. But there is a problem, is there not?
the problem that I think Pratesh is identifying is that we took logic from the 1.1 spec, but only implemented half of it for the fallback tag logic and not the refers API. That is baked into existing clients out there today. And because of that, they don't know how to work with the new API, and they won't work with a different client that would use the full version of the spec. But following the spec, anybody that followed the whole spec and not just half the spec wouldn't have this problem because the client would switch at the exact same time the registry switches.
It's more like you will have to upgrade all of your clients in your CI/CD at the same time to follow 1.1. Roughly, like all producers should migrate and all consumers should also migrate. And which is difficult to do in corporates for enterprises to like migrate everything in one. Because different teams will have different, will control different tooling. So by going in like stepwise fashion, we are giving them control also to migrate. That was the rationale, adding a flag called hyphen something. I forgot the name of the flag. Yes, it's wordy and it's not a good flag. I agree that if someone has better solution, we can move to that.
Yeah, I think the
Brandon,
better way to phrase this is that we're adding compatibility not for newer and older registries, we're adding compatibility for older versions of the notation client.
Yep.
yes.
And other client which might be consuming, which knows how to consume notary signatures.
So
There's
the
nothing
question,
else. This-
Pritesh, that I have here is like coming back to what Brandon actually proposed. And we have, you're saying that our default mode right now is the tag schema, right? And with this flag, we are forcing the referrer API actually to not save the referrers with the index file, but to use the referrer API, which is kind of the 1.1 version. And if we actually reverse that, we need to change the version of notation. That's what you're saying.
Yes, because we are breaking backward compatibility for the customers.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to bump up the major version there. The way I was envisioning was we can do 1.2 and I'll at least allow users to use 1.1 spec, and then at some time later this year, my rule next year, we can just do 2.0 release and make 1.1 default.
I would say to give the best transition for end users, make sure there's no flag at all on the verification, and verification just does automatic flip. And I think that sets you up nicely for in the future when you do change the default. But there's been a long time period of clients to upgrade their client tools.
Yeah, that's the idea. Like for signing, you choose how you want to store the images. For verification, we will do the 1.1 spec check for reference API first. If otherwise, check for text schema there.
But how would you do that? If would you just randomly check the fallback? Because like
on verification, the logic is when you're querying for refers, you query the refers API. If you get a 404, the registry doesn't support that new API, and so you fall back to the tag. And the response from either the tag or the refers API is an identical OCI index.
Yeah, but if you know, when you're querying it, you don't know whether the distribution supports 1.1 or not, whether it supports refers or not.
You do when you query, because the
when you
refers
get a
API will come back with
404,
a 200 or 404.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you were saying. You were speaking over me.
Sorry.
You
know that the registry supports it because of the refers API response. And so
right,
I'm from the registry.
Yeah, I was trying to get to that point. And so when you're calling to verify, the refers API could be supported, but if someone, you know, with this, if someone signs with a version of notation which didn't submit the signatures as a refer, they would be stored as a fallback. And so in those cases, in that case, would the refer return a 404 or would it return an empty list?
It doesn't matter how they push it. Once the registry upgrades, if you're pushing the same manifest, the manifest has a subject field in it. And so regardless of whether you push that fallback tag or not, the registry is still going to respond with the refers API. It's
But you're not,
just the fact that
but
you
the
have
client
the
doesn't
subject
support,
manifest.
the client that pushed the signature didn't support refers, so it's not pushing it with the subject.
The client doesn't have to support refers. They're pushing a manifest with the subject field, and you're pushing the same manifest whether or not you push the fallback tag.
I'm just saying, but our current versions of notation supporting that, pushing it with subject in the fallback mode or not?
Yes, we are pushing with subject. Ritesh, can you confirm that? But I believe we are.
Yes, we do, but I'm not sure whether you're following 100% spec. That was like she was supposed to confirm that. There was a delta between our implementation because we were on RC6 when,
I see
if I remember
Bounty
correctly.
in the comments.
How many clients will be broken? Like, is it like notation 1.0 or is it the RCs before that? Because if they are the RCs, I don't think that we need to be so explicit.
Yeah,
That's kind of the one thing.
we need to confirm that right now. There is a pending task to make sure to figure out what's the delta between our implementation and the GA of 1.1 spec.
And the second
Because
thing I'm struggling. Go ahead.
Sorry, just to complete. We wrote that when it was in RC1 for OCI 1.1, spec was in RC. So we took from that. I'm not sure what's the delta between even the manifest, if it changed after that implementation. So
the other question I have, I'm still struggling with the scenario. So if I have an old client, right? That old client, when it does verification, doesn't matter how I push the referrer, it should work because we implemented the fallback in the verification side. What will happen if you have like all the new client working against the same registry? They will push the referrers differently. But is that a problem or not? That's kind of what I'm struggling to understand.
My understanding from what Pritesh was saying was that it would be an old client that only knows how to talk to the fallback tag, according to a registry that has the refers API that wouldn't see the fallback tag.
So for example, let's say let's assume that in 1.2 this we start supporting OCI 1.1 reference API and start doing that. Let's say a user only updates notation 1.2 for signing, but for verification they are still using 1.0. Let's say cover or ratify, which have inbuilt implementations. In that case, what can happen is I am pushing the signature using reference API, basically the subject field in the manifest, and I'm not updating the tag schema, the tag index, image index. But when ratify or cover anyone tries to verify an image, that will look for the tag, and that tag's image index. If the tag won't exist, or in image index, the signature won't be present.
But isn't that the registry's responsibility, Brandon?
The registry doesn't generate the fallback tag. And so if it supports the refers API, then you're just going to query it from the refers API from that point forward. That's the assumption.
Okay, then, yeah. Then this is a problem, yes, Pritesh. If
and we need
like the client,
we need to verify this just to confirm. We need to still verify what's the delta between our implementation and OCI 1.1 spec, which went GA. If we are supporting spec, if we are supporting subject field and it's as per the specification, probably we might not have this problem.
Okay, so should we keep the issue going? And as far as I understand, we still have some investigation that we need to do and kind of test all these scenarios before we move forward with whatever the logic is. But
yeah, so I think
Brandon, I think
sorry to interrupt you there. The call we made on that call was for a recent release, which is 1.2. We are planning in like 1 or 2 months. We will just remove this We will just say right now the hyphen allow reference API is behind an experimental flag. You have to enable like notation experiment equals to 1 or something like that. We will remove it from that experimental flag and make it a first class citizen of the API. So first class citizen of notation so that anybody can use that feature. And then we can make a call whether how we want to make it default one later on. It was like we are going to do it in piecewise fashion.
And today, what is the verification workflow?
So if we don't have experimental flag enabled by default, we go and check. We only look for tag, not for reference API right now.
I
But
would-
in
I would
1.2,
suggest
we
for
will
the-
make sure that
Go ahead.
we will do the fallback. In 1.2 release, we will do the fallback. Check for reference API first, and then look for tag.
Yeah, that's my suggestion is use the refers API and only fall back when the refers API says otherwise. And that way you set yourself up for going forward when
Yeah.
you do make this change that the clients will just work
Yeah.
automatically.
Yeah, for verify, there would be no flag, like no hyphen, no flag there, but signing there would be flag. And both of this would be enabled by default. You don't need to enable experimental flag.
Thanks
Okay,
for
well, that
explaining
sounds like a
Pritesh.
plan.
I was missing it.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan. I see Toddy's dropped off. Is there any other business? Because otherwise, I think we get half an hour back. Going, gone.
This was the only.
I can't quite hear you, Vanny.
This was the only thing in the agenda. So
Yep. Okay.
unless everyone else.
James, your
Okay.
first order of business is to close the meeting down.
Yeah. No, and it's the best bit.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Pritesh.
everyone. Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, bye.